Welcome to another edition of the Roar of the Lions UK podcast, episode number 67, Nobody Beats the Riz. I'm Matthew Turner, alongside my co-host Steve, and as you can see, our very special guest, Jeff Risdon from Lions Wire and the Detroit Lions podcast. How you doing, boys?
Great to be with you guys. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
All good, thanks. All good. I'm hoping that Jeff got the Bismarcky reference there.
Absolutely. Rest in peace.
We're split. We're split halfway down the middle on the Roar of the Lions on who's heard of Bismarcky and who hasn't. So you've just tipped us into the positive. Thank you, Jeff.
Good. I'll do what I can for you.
Yeah, outing me right at the start. That's bad. That's bad, man. Thank you for that. I forgot you were a bastard, Steve. Oh, Jeff, thank you so much for coming on. We really appreciate it. Just to start off the pod, for you guys watching on YouTube and Twitch, don't forget to hit those like, subscribe buttons, all those bells and whistles. That really help us out. And to talk about what we've done in the recent past, we've done all of our rookie reviews, so we've broken down the tape on all of our 7 draft picks. Go and look at those. And the boys also interviewed a Lions UDFA yesterday. I watched it this lunchtime. It is excellent. We're not going to say any more than that. We'll probably drop it later on this week. As someone actually mentioned on the Detroit Lions podcast in the most recent episode as someone who might make roster this year and has made Chris Burke's early 53-man roster prediction. So, interesting guy, amazing guy. Watch out for that. But we're going to start off with Jeff Risdon. And I know that pretty much everyone who's watching this knows who you are, but if anyone's lived under a rock and maybe just discovered the Lions, and I mean, there's some UK guys who listen to us who might not know who you are. So tell us a bit about yourself, Jeff.
Yeah, sure. I am the managing editor for the Lions Wire. I also work for the Browns Wire. I previously worked for the Texans Wire. I am the lead NFL and NFL draft rater at Real GM. I've been there since 2004. I'm old. I've been doing this for a very long time. I am a longtime Lions fan. I've been a Lions fan since Billy Sims wore the number 20, and I have the jersey to prove it, although it doesn't fit anymore as a youth medium. I've grown a little bit since then.
Great. So I got a few questions, actually, just going to start off with you, actually, and then moving on to the Lions, and then we're going to have maybe a kind of a bit of a fun question at the end, and then maybe a little bit of a mailbag if we have time, but obviously that's a lot to get through, so we'll see how that happens. So just to start off, one thing I really found interesting when I was doing my research on you, as I like to do with every guest, just to kind of get a bit of flavour of what's happened in someone's career, is that you majored in history at Ohio University, and your senior thesis was on the failure of the USFL. And obviously that's something in history that was kind of before my time a little bit, but when, XFL comes along and you hear like, oh, is it going to be the next USFL? And not knowing the context of that, and the fact that you interviewed Donald Trump and Al Davis as part of this project. So a few questions there. One is, how does so the XFL is being bought by The Rock? It looks like it's going to relaunch in 2023. What sort of things do they have to avoid to fail, to not fail, or to do to succeed? What was Donald Trump like without besmirching, without straying too much into getting us the thumbs downs on the video? And about Al Davis too. I mean, there's no more important person in the history of the NFL than Al Davis, potentially. So I know that's quite a few questions, but talk to us about the XFL and then USFL.
Yeah, I'll start with the last part. Talking to Al Davis and Donald Trump, I did that within a 24-hour period. One was one day and one was the next. I was 22 years old at the time. I didn't, have a great grasp of like how monumentally significant that would be in time. I'm just trying to get my thesis done. It was pretty cool though. Donald Trump talked with me, and I asked him, I think, 7 questions, and he answered them. And at that time, he was less willing to play the full villain on it. He made it sound, and I agree with him, by the way, I agree with his take on it, was that the disagreements between the ownerships, that there was competing interests in the ownership. Some, including Trump, wanted to directly compete against the NFL. He saw it as a way to get into the NFL, and it didn't work. It was a roll of he saw it as a roll of the dice that he lost, and he wasn't too happy about that. But he took his shot. There were other owners who were very angry at him for making that shot and not trying to have the league be established and viable on its own. When I talked to Al Davis, and Al talks at the late Al Davis, he talked at you. You didn't ask questions to him. He just talked, and you hope that your recorder was working well enough that you would be able to transcribe it, because he had a kind of a thick accent and a very cocksure swagger to him, even as he talked. And keep in mind, this is 1995. This is before cell phones. This is before the internet, really. So it was quite a thing. And he basically backed up Trump's claim that, you know, his position was that the NFL knew that the owners would fracture, that they would have too many competing interests, and that they weren't really attacking the NFL as much as they were a nuisance to the NFL. And the $1 lawsuit, I highly recommend Jeff Pearlman's book on the subject. By the way, it's great. Trump, as he is wont to do, has since become more polarizing on the subject and sort of tried to distance himself from the failing of the league, which is not what he told me back in 1995. And I think some of that has to do with the fact that he tried to buy the Buffalo Bills, and they asked him to show the money, and he couldn't do it. And he's hated the NFL ever since then. That's a much longer tangent for the U.S. NFL fans and politics fans. I enjoyed actually talking to Donald Trump. He was very informative. He clearly had notes, and I could tell that he was reading from notes, because there was a couple times where he caught himself and he's like, "No, I meant to say this." And that was kind of interesting to me that he prepared for an interview with a 22-year-old kid from Ohio that, you know, I was aware of who he was, but I didn't understand the magnanimity that he would one day be president or hosting The Apprentice or anything like that. So that was quite an experience. So the lesson from it, applying to the XFL and the reincarnated USFL, which is going to be coming back hopefully in 2023, we'll see, is that you have to stick to your business model. You've carefully planned why you think it's going to work. Try to run that through. Don't break up and go sign a player for 20 times more than what your salary cap is supposed to be, which Donald Trump did. Don't try to buy out interests in other teams, which another owner tried to do. Don't fight publicly with other owners within the league. You are supposed to be a uniform body. They needed a strong commissioner. That was one of the big takeaways. So their commissioner was awful. He was a good old boy bumpkin that just didn't understand what was going on. He didn't really understand the dynamics of football or business. And I think that having a strong commissioner to keep all the owners in check, keep everybody in one line, is very critically important. And I hope that those work, because I would love to see a league. I did work very briefly in the now defunct UFL, Go Virginia Destroyers. That was a fun 2 weeks of my life, helping them scout. They still owe me money, which I'm never going to see. But yeah, I would love to see an alternate league pop up. The Spring League is doing a pretty darn good job of that. It doesn't get any publicity, but I'll give them a little bit of a shout out. They do play good football, and there are guys from that who are now graduating into the NFL, and I hope that things like that can continue. And eventually the NFL sanctions one of them, picks one, and makes it a minor league, the way we have minor league basketball and minor league baseball here in the States too. Would be great.
And I mean, surely with you look at the quality of some of the free, undrafted free agents and the people that are on the bubble of the roster, you would think that there's a pool of talent there that is going to be able to provide entertainment and give people some real shots at, graduating to the NFL.
Oh, definitely. I would love to see it. And I also think, go back to the World League of American Football and NFL Europe and what they had. It developed coaching talent too. There was a lot of coaches that came out of that who wound up being very successful. It developed officials. I don't think that gets talked often about. Being an official in the NFL is different than being an official in college, and you're getting some cross training there. You're moving up the ladder. It's a way to develop them, to get them more reps. So I would love to see it. To see guys who are undrafted free agents get a place to play organized ball with real coaching and real officiating and real fans. I mean, look, I live right outside of Grand Rapids, Michigan. We have a minor league basketball team here that actually just got rebranded, but they average about 1,200 to 1,300 fans per game. It's tough to make money that way, but at the same time, there's guys who played on the Grand Rapids Drive who were, in the NBA, Robert Covington being the most notable example. I would love to see that happen, where there's, a kid who goes to college at Michigan State, and he winds up in Grand Rapids playing minor league football for a year or two. And then he winds up on the Lions, maybe as their backup linebacker or a sub-package wide receiver or something like that. I'd absolutely love to see that. And to your point, Steve, that's what this league would be about, is developing that kind of talent and finding that and refining those diamonds in the rough. So I would love to see it.
I can tell you that I'm up in Edinburgh, and it's just gone, I think this month, the 25th anniversary since the Scottish Claymores won the World Bowl, and I can tell you, people are still talking about it.
Wow, that's awesome.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It's something which has got to happen at some point. I mean, just talking from soccer's sort of experience, like there are professional leagues all the way down to the 4th tier, and then many amateur leagues underneath that. But it does seem to me that, like, if you don't get into college, if you're not good enough at 19, you're probably not making it in the NFL ever. But if you have a look at one of England's better players of the last 10 years or so in Jamie Vardy, a soccer player, he was playing in the amateur leagues until 25, 26, and then got his shot, rose up the leagues, and he was one of England's best players, starting his first game at age 28, 29. Like, there are legitimately some guys who, if they could play amateur or kind of feeder league football, could be a late bloomer and grow, but there are no opportunities for those players. If you don't get a college shot, you're not going anywhere. So I definitely think it's the way to go for the league, and also just to provide a bit more entertainment and fun. Like, there's only 5 months of the NFL, and then, as we all know, 7 months of filler, which I tell you actually has been quite fun to do, but can be a bit of a grind at times. So yeah. Anyway, for my next question, it's actually about Real GM. You mentioned that you've been writing there for a long time. Most of our guys will know you from Lions Wire, but it seems to me that the content that you provide there is not really talked about as much. Obviously, Lions Wire is higher profile, at least over here. I don't know if that's true over in the States as well, but what keeps you writing there? What sort of content do you do there which is different to what you do at Lions Wire? What can people expect from you there?
Yeah, sure. They were the first people to give me a shot as a professional writer. They offered me money. I took it. I'm fiercely loyal like that. They've done everything I've ever asked them to do. They've helped cover travel expenses for me. They've opened some doors. They are primarily a basketball site. Most people who are aware of Real GM know from the basketball side, and that's actually how I got into it. I am a massive Cleveland Cavaliers fan. I'm a huge NBA fan in general. My kids are both young basketball players who are going to play college basketball. Hopefully, fingers crossed, they're doing pretty good at it so far. So there's always basketball on in our house. So I sort of got into it that way. And I had connections with some people in the NFL, which is a very long story. But and just off my thesis, I've always been interested in it, and they gave me a chance to write on it. I primarily do NFL draft stuff there now, although I do still do a weekly rap column. It's the 10 cents. I write it every Sunday night. It comes out Monday morning, where I cover the entire league. And I tend to avoid the teams that I cover for the Wires, the Lions and Browns and Texans. I try to focus on the rest of the league. I do actually watch just about every NFL game every week. Not all right away, but I do wind up seeing probably 10 games a week. I go back and I watch them, and I do pay attention. I wind up being on a lot of different team podcasts. I'm on for whatever reason, Giants fans love me. I'm on Giants podcasts. I'm on their actual Big Blue TV a lot. I have a lot of connections with Dolphins, Buccaneers, Texans, Cowboys, have quite a bit of Vikings following too, just because I live where Kirk Cousins is from. And I actually know him a little bit, know his wife a little bit. So I try to venture out into that. And I also, Real GM graciously allows me to use the 10th cent to write whatever the heck I want to. It's generally about music because I'm a massive music nut. I'm a huge heavy metal fan. I'll write on that, or I will write on something else that's going on. Just, I tend to avoid politics and anything sensitive like that, but things that catch my eye. So, it's fun for me. It's a great outlet. If I had to just write about the Detroit Lions and one other football team, I would probably go nuts. I would probably get burned out. So being able to expand like that is really good for my mental sanity, especially when the Lions are bad, because I know there's this mythos that it's good for business when the team is bad. It's really freaking hard mentally. You guys will know this. It's so much better when you're covering a team that's winning, a team that has hope. And that has not been the case in Detroit of late.
Well, and it hasn't been the case for Cleveland until late, right? It must have
Yes.
been only
Oh,
18
man.
months or so that you can be truly positive about what's happening there.
Oh yeah, and that's been, you know, I'm from the Cleveland area. I am not actually a Browns fan. We can probably talk about that later at some point. But just seeing what is done for my hometown and my home city, I'm very grateful for the turnaround that they have, and the fact that I've covered them from the very bottom. I started covering them professionally for the Wires the day after Christmas in 2016. So my first year with them was the winless year, and I watched them, and I was in their training camps, and I saw them going into it. And I'm like, oh my God, this team's really bad. Could they be as bad as the 2008 Lions team that I covered? I honestly, I was surprised that they were, but by golly, they pulled it off. So it's been great to see that rising. And I'll say this: if you've got a little bit of money to wager, put a little bit on the Browns to win the Super Bowl, because they have a very, very legitimate chance to do that this year. And I've never thought that as a almost 50-year-old Clevelander.
It kind of feels like with the Browns that they have guys who would be starting on other teams, kind of like in a sort of Isaiah Simmons mold of sort of, oh, they've got a load of potential, but if you chuck him in the first year, it might go badly. But these guys are going to be the backups. They're not potentially going to start. So they've got all the high potential guys who are going to rotate in on the odd snap here and there, and they'll probably ball out on those plays because they're not being chucked into the fire. It just looks like it's going to work.
It really does. You know, they do have some questions on their middle of the field defense. Is probably the biggest question, and they could be exploited there. But their offensive line is so good. I have come to believe more in Baker Mayfield than I did, and I did like him in the draft process. I did want him in Cleveland. I thought that his mentality would be perfect for the town, and that's proven true. He's been a little bit better of a passer than I thought he would be too, and. I love Jarvis Landry. He's one of my favorite players. Myles Garrett. The fact that you can go to the Cleveland Museum of Natural History and Myles Garrett could be your kid's docent in his high school or his school field trip is amazing to me. They're a very easy team to like, and I really hope it happens for them. I really do, because aside from the fact that it's my hometown, it shows that the path can be there, and it's something that the Lions could emulate. And God knows if the Lions ever win a title, my goodness, I honestly don't know what my reaction would be. As I said, I'm a giant Cleveland Cavaliers fan. When they won in 2016, I cried inconsolably tears of joy for like 20 minutes. And if the Lions ever happen, and I'm proud of that too. You know, I know I wasn't the only one. If that ever happens to the Lions, man, there isn't enough Kleenex in the house, man.
What happens in a Browns Lions Super Bowl, Jeff?
Oh God, that would be so. It's funny you say that, because a friend of mine, my old neighbor, he actually gave me a program for the 1957 NFL championship game, which was the Browns and the Lions. And the Lions won, I think it was 59-10. And that's pretty crazy. I will be rooting for the Lions, but I will say this: there probably wouldn't be a loser in my world, which would be kind of nice. It would be a happy problem to worry about. Let me say
Very happy problem, yeah. So starting off in your earlier career, you actually started your own site, DetroitLionsDraft.com. Was that just because you really wanted to have your own site, or you saw that as a route into the kind of paid professional ranks? How does it differ from what you do now? Like, did you have a lot more freedom just to say exactly what you wanted?
Yes, absolutely. I was not bound by the filters. The Lions Wire, the Wire properties, we are part of the USA Today umbrella. We do have editorial standards. We have certain things that we can and cannot say, certain formatting that we have to follow, which I don't have a problem with, but I was freer. I could curse, which I tend to work blue. If you've ever heard the podcast, you'd know that. And I tended to be a little bit more, extremist in my views, specifically on draft picks. Like if not to beat up the guy, but Cody Kessler, I compared him on a flow chart of USC quarterbacks, and he was right next to a clogged toilet in the locker room. And I can't do that kind of stuff at USA Today, unfortunately, because they will frown on that. But I was right, by the way. That was fun. I actually got approached. There was a whole network of the team draft sites. So I was running by New England's Patriots draft. and James Christensen, easy for me to say. And he asked me to do the Lions one. It was a chance for me to write about the Lions and actually like get into it. That was a long time ago. I can't even remember when it was when I started it, but it was a way for me to like write about the Lions and not just clog Real GM with it, because at that point it was the only Lions outlet that I had, and it led into from that I got hired by Bleacher Report to cover the Lions, and I covered them for two and a quarter seasons there before they switched what they were trying to do with their team coverage. So, you know, it opened some doors, and it was great, and that was what really introduced me to a lot of the Lions fandom, and it was at that point that I got onto Twitter as well, and that sort of just, you know, back before Twitter became what it is today, it was actually a pretty fun place to have discussions and talk football and things like that. It ain't like that anymore.
I think
it's still a fun place. You just have to wash your hands after you've been on it.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah.
I think because the reputation of it is so bad now that it's like Jared Goff. It's almost underrated. Like, people just say it's so bad that you go on there and actually it's just not as bad as you thought it was. It's just not as good as you hope it will be either. But,
that's pretty fair, actually, because I have to say I do have some really good interactions with a lot of people, but then there's the professional trolls that are out there, and I'm certainly not saying that it just happens to me, because I know it happens to a lot. You ever want a lesson in the dregs of humanity? Go read Dave Burkett's timeline sometime and all the responses to his things. So I'll say I get off fairly light on that, but my God, there are people that just, if your goal is to make somebody's life miserable, reevaluate your goals, people.
Yeah,
we've had Dave Burkett on the pod recently, and if you're being nasty to Dave Burkett, I mean, Dave Burkett's the nicest guy.
He absolutely is. He writes some polarizing things, and I get that. That's part of what our job is, and part of our job is to take the criticism and have thick enough skin that you know, criticisms about what we say shouldn't bother us. But when you're picking on Dave's family because you don't like what he wrote, you know, find something better to do with your time.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's just a distrust of journalism. It doesn't matter whether it's politics or anything else, and it's everywhere, and it's everywhere in life right now. Whatever it happens to be, I think this, therefore you are wrong, and we just need to get over that. We need to get over that. Let's move on to something a bit more cheery.
Yes,
you are now the co-host of the Detroit Lions podcast for Reddit, and that happens fairly recently now. One of the questions we had from Rob in our WhatsApp chat was, how did that come about? Obviously, Case was the host. He had to step away because of his job, I believe. But in terms of the transition, was that kind of quite a quick, short notice? Riz, I'm in a bind. Can you join? Or was it like a sort of, Case is planning to do this, it's going to be a little while, could you consider doing this? How did it all happen?
Yeah, it was kind of in between those two. Case told Chris, the regular host, that he was you know, going through some stuff. He had a couple of times where he couldn't do the show as scheduled. I filled in last minute on one of them, and Andy Sandman filled in on one of those. And Case just basically realized that it wasn't something that he had the time to do right anymore. And I respect that. I respect his professionalism. He and I talked. He's like, please do this for me. I would love it if you take over. So it happened within like a 2-week period. It wasn't like, oh my God, you know, Case quit like an hour before show. It wasn't anything like that. It wasn't dramatic. No. He's still welcome to come back on. In fact, he did come on while I was on vacation, and I loved it. It was a great show. I think it was his 6th anniversary.
Sixth anniversary, yeah, that was so good.
Yeah. And we figured out now. We actually went back. I've now been on half the shows. I made my first appearance, I think, in episode 41. And Chris just like summoned me on a whim, like, hey man, you want to come to our podcast? I'm like, sure, why not? I didn't know him. I was unfamiliar with the podcast. I went on, and Chris and I hit it off. Case and I hit it off, and it just, from there it's blossomed into what it is today, which is it's pretty darn cool that so many people recognize that. It's fun to me because I can tell where people know me from, because if they say Riz, I know that they know me from the podcast, and that's kind of a cool differentiation for me.
Talking about the podcast, I think you've now recently kind of started calling it the Lions Wire Unofficial Podcast, because you don't have one anymore. You kind of said that on the pod a few weeks ago, I think.
I did, yeah.
So you just said, obviously, that it's been some time since you kind of started on the pod, but so Chris just hit you up out of the blue, and is that how it kind of came out? But also, do you have any like great stories from your time working together? Is there like a notable moment, maybe an episode that you did, or just a bit in your personal lives? Because I know that obviously when Chris comes back to Detroit, you guys hang out quite a lot. So
Yeah,
have you got a story that comes to mind?
No, he basically cold called me. I got a DM. I didn't follow him on the podcast at the time. I wasn't aware of what it was. I checked my DMs, which I don't do very often, and it happened to be timely. And I'm like, sure, I'll do it. It was great, and we hit it off. We've just had a lot of fun. He and I have gone to the Senior Bowl together. Probably the most fun moment. Actually, we flew together to New Orleans because it's impossible to get to Mobile reasonably and get a rental car. So we fly to New Orleans, rent a car there, and drive the 1.5 hours to Mobile to do it. We arrived, and as we got off the plane and were walking into the lobby of the hotel was when the Tommy Lee Lewis catch or the pass interference that happened like right in front of us. Like oh crap, we got to get the hell out of here because it was in New Orleans. We knew that it wasn't going to be done well. So we got to the rental car counter as fast as we could, rented the car as fast as we could. Like, dude, just whatever. Where do I sign? Here's my credit card. We got to go. We got to go, man. When we drove by the Superdome, we were half expecting to see like flames coming out of it for rioting and everything. Thankfully, it didn't happen that way, but we've had a really good time doing that. Now, he's become a very good friend. In real life, we actually talk about stuff other than football now, and it's a lot of fun. So it's been really cool. I'm glad that I said yes to doing the podcast. That's because you never know.
You never know. And graduated to real friends, man. Steve, I hope we get there one day.
Absolutely.
Just on DLP, it's one of my favorite podcasts. I've listened to basically all of them. I think they're all great in their own way and do different things. The Breakdown podcast, Pride of Detroit, especially now Eric is on there and what have you. But DLP is my favorite. I am a member of the Slack chat. If you don't know about the Slack chat, it is an incredible array of diverse people who are all positive about the Lions in their own way. There's no one necessarily particularly downbeat on there, at least not all the time. There's a healthy dose of realism on there, but it's great. It's $1 a month minimum. You can do more if you want. I urge everyone to go and do that because it's really, really great. And you guys have your training camp party, which I wanted to talk about. It's on the 31st of this month, so 4 days away. Saturday night?
Saturday night.
And I think there are still tickets available. I don't think it's sold out.
No, there are still tickets available as of now. I haven't checked since yesterday, but there was still some openings. It is a limited seating place, so you will want to get in on it, and you do absolutely need a ticket. We do have security at the door, believe it or not, who will enforce it.
So you have a current Lions player, you have Lions personalities coming, so it's going to be a great batch, right? I wish I lived in the States. I would be there.
It's a really good time. Dan Miller, the voice of the Lions, you know him from the radio. He's come to all but one of them. He was at our first one, which we did at a brewery that was a little bit more remote, and he just showed up. Like, we invited him, we didn't think he'd show up, and he came and just sat and talked. There was like 20 of us there, and he held court. It was great. So if you want to meet Dan, he will certainly sign autographs, although he does get embarrassed by people asking for his autograph, but he tells stories. He weighs in on what's going on with the Lions, and it's great. We will have Lions undrafted free agent Jerry Jacobs there. We interviewed him on the last podcast. He's great. He's a fun guy. He's someone to root for. He's going to show up and come on out and have some fun with us. He's a good dude. There's a couple other people that may or may not be there. Justin Rogers has hinted that he wants to come. It's sort of up to his wife. We all know how that goes. But it's a really good time. And I will say this: the pizza that we get there from the Upton Grill in Commerce Township, really, it's really genuinely good food. I enjoy eating there, and I look forward to doing that. I will get my money's worth on the pizza alone.
Okay, final question on you, and then Steve's going to head up the Lions chat. But Rob on WhatsApp just wanted to ask, why did you choose, when you were going to drop the managing editor title from one of the Wires, did you choose the Lions over the Browns? I presume it's because you support the Lions.
Yes, that's a good question, though. It's also the fact that we had just so the Lions Wire, we had just lost Eric Schlitt. He went to Pride of Detroit with my blessing. There was no acrimony there at all. He's doing great. I'm happy for him. I get along very well with Eric still, with Jeremy Reisman at Pride of Detroit. There wasn't a natural successor that could do what I did for Lions Wire And there was at Brownswire, my friend Jared Mueller, we go way back. He's my roommate at the Combine every year. We're from the same hometown. He had been itching to get into more Browns coverage and spreading his wings a little bit more into that. We talked about it in the past. It was brewing actually for some time, and the time finally came right where it worked out that I can still do Browns. I actually, the last thing I published was just on Brownswire just before I did this. And I do still enjoy covering them, but my heart's with the Lions, and because I do the podcast. I used to also be on the radio here in Grand Rapids. Our station, iHeart, pulled the plug on local sports. That's evil of them. So I didn't have an outlet for Lions elsewhere that on a daily basis. I still like doing that. So it was pretty easy for me to choose keeping with the Lions rather than the Browns. Plus, I'll be at training camp tomorrow morning. I will be there in about 2.5 hours. It's about to where the Browns train. It's about 5 hours from my house, so that helps too.
Fair. Just a bit of breaking news. We're going to hit the news probably after Jeff has gone, but Blake Bortles, who I thought was going to start for Green Bay 3 days ago, has been released by Green Bay. What fun. So Rodgers is definitely back. Wow. Okay. I really thought the love was just going to be so much of a bust that they go, you know what, this Blake Bortles guy is still better. But anyway, Steve, Lions questions.
Well, you've sucked all the air out of me because I was really looking forward to some Bortles in Green Bay, but okay, I'm just going to have to get over that. So yeah, let's talk some Lions, Jeff. And obviously, we're not allowed to call it a rebuild. It's definitely a retool. So much has changed. In terms of like from Sheila Fordham to Brad Holmes, it kind of feels we've tried this all change strategy before in terms of Caldwell to Patricia, but why does this feel different to you?
I'll say I do think that Sheila is very different from her parents, both her mother and her father. I thought Martha was a step in the right direction. I think she seems to understand that there is a negative stigma towards the team, and I think people didn't necessarily convey that to Martha adequately enough. Sheila is acutely aware of the national image of the Lions, and she is actively working to change it. It bothers her. I believe her when she says it bothers her too. I'm not sure that I did that when Martha or Rod Wood, speaking for Martha, said that. I believe Sheila. I know that she's a competitive person. I know that she wants to make it happen. I think she's doing, in good faith, the best that she can with what she's been given. And because of that, I do think that there's reason for longer term optimism with the team than there was. Look, I have gotten on people for years and years who say, sell the team, and scream the team. Who the hell is going to buy it? Do you know that they're going to be better? Because I will tell you, as a Cleveland Cavaliers fan, Dan Gilbert is the most likely person to buy the Detroit Lions. He's a freaking train wreck as an owner. He scared LeBron out of his hometown twice. I don't want anything to do with that. I'd rather have the Ford family keep on to it. So be very careful with what you wish for, and consider the sale to or the transfer of power to Sheila as a quote unquote sale. And I think you'll feel better about her. I really do.
Yeah, I mean, it happens all the time in UK in the soccer teams that the fans are, sell the team, and then there's an immediate frying pan and fire situation. Just research Newcastle United Football Club if you want a classic example of what a train wreck looks like from soccer terms. But it certainly feels like Brad Holmes is the first building block in that kind of like change. And in terms of like, I know it's really hard to these days, like everything gets a grade, but do you feel that Holmes has had a good first sort of 12 months?
I do. I appreciate the way that he's gone about building the team, and not the way that he's gone about it doesn't scream we're trying to win right away. It screams we're trying to do this right. We're going to be better in 2021 than we were in 2020. The record may not reflect that, but it's going to be a better team. And you can see that there's a process in place, and you can see how it ladders up towards being more successful in time. And I appreciate that. I appreciate that they didn't panic. They didn't go out and, well, I will complain about the wide receiving core, and I will, and you will hear it a lot. You will see it on Lions Wire as well. You will hear me complaining about it. The fact that they didn't go after a guy like Deshaun Jackson, or I'm trying to think of some other wide receivers that were out there.
Or keep Marvin Jones.
Right. Yeah. Because they're realistically in 2022, 2023, when this team should be competing for a playoff berth, those guys probably aren't going to be helping you. And while the rental is nice, I think if you look at the Philadelphia Eagles, you'll see a team that tried to do that sort of patching on the fly, and hang on and hang on and hang on, and it didn't work. And they're in a worse spot right now than the Detroit Lions are. I firmly believe that. Even though I do like their rookie coach. I like the fact that Brad is doing about it. I don't agree with all the draft picks. I don't agree with all of the moves that they've made, but you're never going to do that. If you buy hook, line, and sinker every single move that your team's made, you're probably going to not be a very happy fan, because you're going to get disappointed a lot. You got to have some level of sobriety on the Lions Kool-Aid. Not every move is going to work out. I have a pretty good idea of which moves are going to work out, which ones aren't, but I stand to be surprised and disappointed on my own, So yeah, I like it. I like the direction. I like the focus. I really like the fact that his philosophy of building a consensus and not just dictating what's going to happen. I think that's very well received around the league. I think that's something that's becoming more popular. I see how it works in Cleveland. I've seen how it works with the way that the Atlanta Falcons were run when they were very successful going to a Super Bowl. I think you see it in Seattle where John Schneider and Pete Carroll come at it from different angles, but they don't fight on very often, and they wind up, the people that they buy into really buy into it because they know that it was what they can't play one off the other. And I think you're seeing that dynamic with Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell right now, is that they're a unified front. They see things differently, but you can't go to mom to complain about dad, because dad's going to send you back and say, hey, that isn't how we do it anymore. And that's a very welcome dynamic change in Detroit.
And I think I kind of, looking back at the Quinn Trisha era, I think one of the many crimes on their charge list is that, I just see it as like the graveyard of player development, in terms of going from drafting people to bringing people through. What, in terms of the new coaching team, who's kind of impressed you, and who do you think is like maybe a second, third, fourth year player on the roster that we're going to really see some progress through?
Yeah, I'm a big Hank Fraley fan. He stayed on, and I'm glad that they did keep him as the offensive line coach. And I think you're going to see a much better Halapoulivaati Vaitai in his second year in Detroit.
Okay.
I think that's going to work out. I think the secondary is probably going to get a big overhaul in terms of just the positive energy. I think Tracy Walker is primed for a bounce back year. If you look at how Matt Patricia used that guy, it's awful. They asked him to specialize in what he's not good at and never do what he is good at. And I think that this coaching staff will get more out of it. I like the idea of having Deuce Staley as the running backs coach. I think he can maximize what DeAndre Swift offers you. I tend to be lower on Swift than most Lions fans are. That doesn't mean I think he sucks, but I do think that people who are there thinking he's going to be Alvin Kamara, you're probably going to have to scale that back a little bit. But I do think that if he's ever going to get there, Deuce Staley is the kind of guy who's going to get that out of him.
I think the one thing about Swift was when he dropped that pass against the Bears in the first game, I mean, he could have just absolutely disappeared for the season, but he didn't. He came back and showed some character and made some plays. So I think for me, that's like a tick, and that he's got some character.
Definitely. Yeah, he's definitely got the mental toughness. And I will give Matt Patricia some credit there. I thought he handled that situation specifically very well. One of the few things that he did right in Detroit.
And just on the draft, obviously, we had that pick, number 7 pick. You were really convinced that Saul was the direction that the Lions were going to go in as we kind of got closer to the draft. We've just done Matt and Ant from the team have just done a review of some tape on our YouTube channel, which is definitely worth checking out. And I mean, there's just some devastating athleticism there. What do you think we have in Penei Sewell? How would you kind of sum him up?
He's a potential very, very good player. I like that they're moving to right tackle. I think his skill set is better there. I think, especially because you have a good left tackle in Taylor Decker already. This guy can really help your run game right away. I think the sense of him as a pass protector is overblown. It doesn't mean that he's bad. I think he's going to be very good at it, but I do think that there's some work to be done there. He tends to lean out over his toes a little bit. He tends to, when he's engaged, to stop moving his feet fully as well as you would like to see. So there's work to be done. And he didn't play football. He hasn't played in almost 2 years. So I'm concerned that the fan expectation is a little too high for him, at least as a rookie. But this is a really, really high-end football player. I also liked Rashawn Slater. I thought he was just as good as Sewell, but I also think he happens to be a left tackle only. So and the Lions didn't need a left tackle, so I get why they were enamored with Sewell, and I'm happy that he's here. From my very limited interactions with him, and seeing him in press conferences, watching him at the 3 practices that I've been to that were open. He fits in, and man, there's something about that guy. He has that, that intangible quality where you just like, yeah, I see it. I get it. I get why they liked him so much.
You can see that in his opening press conference, actually. He puts the hat on, walks away from the stage, and goes, "What's up? We're in the D." And it's just like, if you have the confidence to do that as a 20-year-old, the second youngest player in the draft, and you can go like, because not a lot of people might be thrilled at the top of the draft to come to Detroit. It's not a fashionable destination for people. And for him to come up there and just look genuinely pleased to be here and to swag in, not look too overconfident, but just be like, "I'm here. Let's do this." Like, it was just amazing to watch.
It is. And I'm rooting for him. I hope that it works out very well for him because he's a very easy guy to root for. Again, we knew those of us that are around the team knew that it was either going to be Jamar Chase or Penei Sewell at 5 and 7. The Cincinnati Bengals were taking one at 5, and the Lions were going to take the other one at 7. We knew that the Miami Dolphins at number 6 were not in play with that. So we spent most of the last 2 weeks before the draft like poring over everything Sewell and everything Chase. And I think they made a good decision there. And again, I like Jamar Chase a lot, but I think Penei Sewell's ceiling is higher. So I'll live with the relative crap we have at wide receiver for a year for that.
and in the recent DLP pod, you featured a guy who was an undrafted free agent who's just caught a break with the Lions, cornerback Jerry Jacobs. Like, for anyone who's not listened to the pod, it's an amazing story, and I absolutely recommend because he came across so well, just in terms of the kind of adversity, in terms of his come up. What about the rest of the draftee class? Is there anyone else that you're really excited to see about in a jersey? Not just the draftees, but also the free agents we took on.
Yeah, I have enjoyed watching Sage Surratt as an undrafted free agent. I think he's got a very real shot to make an impact as a wide receiver on this team. I wish he was faster, but there's something there with that guy. I am a huge Derek Barnes fan. I love what he offers. There's just the fact that he can do everything. He is basically what Jamie Collins was as a prospect. He's a little bit lower rated because he's coming out of Purdue. And they didn't necessarily have the most successful program, and they moved him around all over the place. The fact that he can play as an inside linebacker, that he can play as an outside linebacker, the fact that if they go to a 4-man front, he can put his hand in the dirt and play on the edge and terrorize the quarterback. I think he's a very high-end prospect. He's a steal of a value where they got him, and I'm very excited about Derek Barnes.
And then also on the last DLP pod, I'm not sure this would have made it past the editorial standards of USA Today. But my favorite soundbite was, I think you said, we need to completely stop defecating on Jared Goff.
Yes.
And you and Chris tossed around some really interesting stats comparing Goff and Stafford. You mentioned like the kind of like, where he is and the kind of what around the NFL would call the Dalton Index. And you mentioned Ryan Tannehill, which I think is a really good comparison. But what do you think? When you go back to Goff in 2017 and 2018, where he threw over 4,000 yards, I think 2018, 32 touchdowns, only 12 interceptions, 8.4 yards per attempt, 4,600 yards. It was only like in 2019 when it was like 22 TDs, 16 interceptions, and all went a bit Jameis Winston. But how can we get that 2018 Goff firing and being like, a real productive part of that kind of rebuild offense?
Yeah, I think the first thing is that you have to have confidence in him. And I think the Brad Holmes has shown an overwhelming amount of confidence in him, an almost irrational confidence in Jared Goff. And he was part of the Rams process in getting Goff. I have admitted it. I was not a huge Goff fan when he was coming out of California. I don't think he was the best quarterback in that draft class. I wound up being wrong on that badly with who I had. But the fact that the team believes in him and the coaching staff is going to support him. He was petrified to make mistakes in Los Angeles. He and Sean McVay's relationship was toxic. You can't live with a toxic relationship between your coach and your quarterback. You just can't. So I'm hopeful that Goff is still in there somewhere, and that Dan Campbell and quarterback coach Mark Brunell can coax it out of him. Because he can be good enough to get your team to a Super Bowl if you have a good enough team around him. The Lions do not have that now, but they could in another year if he keeps ascending back to where he was. Because this is a guy, when he is playing with confidence and swagger and belief in himself, and the teammates believe in him, he can be a pretty darn good NFL quarterback. Is he as good as Matthew Stafford? No, he's not. But you don't necessarily have to have Matthew Stafford to win. And by the way, Matthew Stafford, this is not on him, but the Lions didn't win with him. It was probably time to try something different. And Goff was the best possible quarterback that you could have gotten in exchange for him. So from that standpoint, I think they did okay. Is it going to work with Jared Goff? I have no idea. I have my doubts, but I also have less doubts now the more that I've looked at it. And the more that I've actually talked to our Rams Wire editor, Cam, and he's reinforced just how difficult it can be to work with Sean McVay when he makes up his mind on something. And I think that is a benefit of the doubt that Goff, by and large, has not gotten from either Detroit or the Lions media, and I'm guilty of that too. And I hope that changes, and I hope that we cover him a little bit more objectively and less outwardly negatively than we have. I know I'm trying to do that. And I think he can see that a little bit coming on too. He's done nothing to earn, other than playing bad for a year and a half. Because really, and you go back to their playoff game last year, he was the best Ram on the field when they lost to the Packers. He was good. He had a very good game. His teammates let him down. So from that standpoint, I think the trashing, the defecating upon him, as you eloquently summarized.
It was actually you that eloquently summarized it.
Did I say it that way? I don't even know.
I was quoting you, Jeff.
I was good. Thank you for quoting me. I couldn't remember. I know I tried to keep the profanity to a minimum, but I was in a hotel last week. It was a weird situation. If you listen to the podcast, you can. There was a very angry dog right outside the door from where I was sitting. It threw me off a little bit. Yeah. I just hope that again, am I a big Jared Goff believer? No, I'm not. But I'm also not someone who's going to tell you that you shouldn't have some hope in him, because there is a good football player there somewhere. It's on the Lions to find it. If they find it, thank God.
Cool. And just something about what Brock has said about McVay and Campbell being similarly without ego, which I was like, what?
I don't know if I trust that one or not. Yeah, Michael Brockers. I'll say this: Michael Brockers is a guy that doesn't get enough attention nationally for what he's going to do for this Lions team. They needed a leader on that defensive line, and this is not disrespectful to Trey Flowers, but Trey Flowers is kind of Trey Flowers. He's one of those follow me by example guys. And I think Michael Brockers is more of the, hey, young man, this is what you need to be doing. I'm going to show you what you need to be doing. And that's not Flowers' style. And I think having that ability to have different sort of, Trey Flowers is a really good football player, and he will, do some very positive things, and the leading by example, that works for a lot of guys, but it doesn't work for everybody. Now that they have that contrasting style, I think it's going to really help guys like John Penasini, and Romeo Okwara and Julian Okwara get the different voices in their ears from guys who've been doing it really well in the NFL for a long time. And I think that's an underappreciated acquisition. I also think the Rams are going to miss him a hell of a lot more than is getting talked about too.
Just final question for me, just on the Lions and actually on the NFC North. So obviously there's been an incredibly tedious narrative about what's been going on in Green Bay. And as we all expected, what we thought and was going to happen has kind of happened. Chicago, Justin Fields has been talked about as like the second coming of Dak Prescott. So, we've had to listen to that bullshit all summer. But I mean, interested to know that you kind of, know Kirk Cousins. But my question is, are we kind of sleeping on the Vikings in terms of the kind of threat in the NFC North? Their
Absolutely.
top five offense, Thielen, Jefferson, Cook. The defense was 27th in the league last year. That they're not going to be 27th again. Do you think there's a threat coming from Minnesota?
Absolutely. And I think that you hit on it with the defense. They lost so many man games to injuries last year. They had less sacks and a lower pressure rate than the Detroit Lions did at rushing the quarterback last year. Danielle Hunter didn't play it down. That guy's awesome. He is going to be a problem for Penei Sewell and Taylor Decker, and he plays on both sides, so he's gonna get it. That guy's a really good football player. They had a couple of other injuries that they're going to miss Anthony Harris on the back end, but
Anthony Barr was out from, I think he played 2 games and missed the whole season.
Absolutely, they are loaded on defense, much better. They are going to be much better on defense than they have been. And I think their offense is still good. Dalvin Cook is a great threat. I don't think he gets enough attention from Lions fans or nationally at how good and skilled and diversely skilled he is. Yeah, they're a very good football team. I will push back. I do like Justin Fields a lot. I think he's going to be great. I would have liked the Lions to take him at number 7. They chose a different path, and I'll deal with that. But I think that Fields is going to be really good. I think based on what I heard earlier today, it sounds like he's probably going to be their starter at the beginning of the season, and that means that he's coming along really well. That guy, if you go back and watch what he's done and strip away, if he was a quarterback from Alabama and not Ohio State, every single Lions fan would have been like, oh my God, why do we not draft this guy? What are we doing here with this rebuild? We got to fire these guys already because they passed on him. But because he went to Ohio State, which doesn't have a history of producing quarterbacks at all, and also most people in Michigan just inherently hate because they think it's Ohio. I went to Ohio. I didn't go to Ohio State, folks. I'm a Bobcat. I'm not a Buckeye. Get past that. Michigan fans confuse Ohio and Ohio State. They never confuse Michigan and Michigan State. It's very strange like that. But I digress. But yeah, I think Justin Fields is going to be legit. I think that's going to be a problem for years to come. So it's a very tough division. I do think that the Packers, they're going to have their one and done with Aaron Rodgers, and then God help him with Jordan Love, because I didn't like him coming out of the draft. I don't think he's that good. They tried DeShone Kizer once. They bailed on that very quickly, and I liked DeShone Kizer better than I liked Jordan Love coming out. And they're very similar quarterbacks. So we're going to have to suck it up for one more year. And unfortunately, their defense is still pretty good, and their offensive line is still pretty good. So I mean, they're not going to crash. But the difference between Aaron Rodgers and Jordan Love is the difference between going 14-3 and 3-14. Absolutely. So enjoy it. Let this last dance, Packers fans, because it's not going to be pretty after that.
Yeah, and maybe they don't.
And then they got rid of Bortles. I was with you. I thought Blake Bortles would be ahead of Jordan Love as well. But
hey, they don't have the greatest off-ball linebacker, but Jeff, off-ball linebackers, we've heard an opinion on this before by you, I think.
Get them off the field. You don't need them. Overpaying for off-ball linebackers is the single stupidest thing you can do in the NFL. You don't believe me? Look at the Jacksonville Jaguars.
So 2 questions to finish, because I know that you've got to be on dad duty for said kids are going to take the sporting world by storm in the next few years. But
let's hope so.
First of all, off-ball linebacker, there's been one very big re-signing recently in San Francisco. Do you think then that is overpaying, or do you think at the very top of wedge that there is a sliver of value up there, and it's just everywhere else underneath that perhaps there's no value?
I do think that Fred Warner is a great player, and I think he probably deserves to be one of the highest paid. Darius Leonard's going to get paid any minute now and take that title back over, and he deserves it too. I will say this, though. The 49ers defense is designed by all the draft capital that they invested in first round on their defensive line is designed specifically for a guy like Warner, who is a playmaking linebacker. If you don't have that defensive line in front of him, he's not going to be good. So they structured about it the right way. I think that they might regret it in time if their defensive line, falls off some. It's going to hurt. but he's a really good player. And the fact that they use him so much in coverage and is an integral part of what they do in coverage, he's basically a safety in coverage and a very good one at that. That he probably deserves that. I think Devin Bush in Pittsburgh is going to be that kind of guy. I know people go gaga over Devin White in Tampa Bay. Devin White was not the best linebacker in the Buccaneers last year until their playoff run. In fact, there were people in Tampa Bay who were quietly calling him a bust up until about week 16 last year. You don't ever hear that anymore because he wasn't being that effective. And Ndamukong Suh played his butt off in their playoff run. I don't think that gets talked up enough. Their defensive line is really, really good. If you're going to have an emphasis on linebackers, your defensive line had better be awesome. And I think San Francisco's, when they're healthy, it is. Tampa Bay's, when it's healthy, it is. And I think that takes a lot of pressure off. I'll contrast it to a guy like Joe Schobert, who I watched in Cleveland. Really, really good coverage linebacker. Not a great tackler, not a great run defender. And Jacksonville paid him to be that tier. I think he's still the 6th highest paid off-ball linebacker in the league. He's not a top 10 off-ball linebacker, and they don't have a defensive line that can support him, and he struggles behind it. That's what you have to be careful of. And specifically in Matt Patricia's defense, our defensive line was awful last year. It didn't play well. The not having a pass rush means that you're asking those coverage linebackers to be, in fact, emphasis in coverage. That's not how you run a defense. So some of that was directed specifically at the Lions defense as it existed when I went on my little rant, which you can look up on YouTube because it's fun. But in general, I would say that overpaying for an off-ball linebacker is still a very big mistake. And again, the Colts, they have to do it with Darius Leonard. I get why the 49ers did it with Fred Warner, and I think it can work for them. But I still don't want my defense structured that way. I want strength at corner, and I want strength at rushing the passer more than I want a linebacker who can do a lot of different things. I really do.
Agreed. I really want to get in this last question just before you go, because it's just something for me, and screw everyone else. We have talked in DMs on the Slack chat very briefly, but we have talked about metal bands, rock bands, prog rock bands, specifically Dream Theater and Porcupine Tree, two of my favorites. I know that you like them very much as well.
Yes.
Could you do a small power ranking of your top rock metal bands ever? Your favorite bands?
My favorite bands. I will say the Dream Theater takes the cake. I'm not a huge fan of 2 of their last 3 albums, including The Astonishing. I thought that they tried, they missed. So they're number 1 for me. I am a massive Coheed and Cambria fan. I have passed that on to my daughter. My 12-year-old daughter is a huge Child of the Fence as well. They're probably number 2. Porcupine Tree's up there. Stephen Wilson's gone weird in his solo stuff, and I don't necessarily get all that. But the albums that they had, in fact, they just reissued The Incident, which is one of my favorite albums from them. I love that. I love how it tells the story all the way through.
I've been playing In Absentia for weeks now, the remastered edition.
Yes. Collapse the Light into Earth is probably my favorite song of all time. I absolutely love that. I was a huge Queensryche fan back in the day. Again, that band has gone through a lot of weird things, but I really like that. I'm a big Iron Maiden fan. I got into interestingly enough, Finnish folk metal for a while, and the band Tumor Sauce and battle metal really, really spoke to me, and I loved it. They actually just broke up not too long ago. They called it quits. Their last album was in 2013, but I loved them a very weird, inordinate amount. I'm a huge Deep Purple fan. I have a much increased appreciation for them. I wish I would have gotten into them when they were still like a modern contemporary act putting out things, because I am old enough to know that. My mom had Deep Purple albums back in 8 tracks back in the day, and I never listened to them. I regret that now. Yeah, I branched off into I get into more metal. I'm a big Megadeth fan. I'm one of those weirdos. I prefer Megadeth to Metallica, just the way it hits me. So power rankings, Maiden would be up there, Megadeth would be up there, Queensryche would probably be number 4 though. From what they did with the Rage for Order, Operation Mindcrime, and Empire, that little trilogy of albums right there is really tough to beat. So that's probably where I'm at with it.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for indulging me with that. That's great.
No problem. I always talk music. You know that.
I'm happy to indulge this prog watch chat on our pod because you knew who Beats Marquee was, Jeff. So you're excused. Absolutely.
And you say he's just a friend. That came out my senior year of high school, believe it or not. That was that, and I remember actually going to prom in a limousine, and 20 of us all screaming that at the top of our lungs.
Fantastic. Thank you
Excellent.
so much for coming on, Jeff. I don't know if you've got something coming up on the DLP that guys should go
Yeah,
and
we do.
see.
We are recording tonight. We may have a guest. We may not. I haven't heard full confirmation on that. It would be a really cool guest if we get him. I hope we do. If not, we'll be previewing training camp.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for coming on. It's been a real thrill. So
my pleasure, guys.
We'll see you soon. I'll talk to you all
Slack. Right. Thanks.
Cheers.
Cheers, Jeff. Great stuff.
Thank you so much to Jeff Risdon there. I'm going to have to calm down a bit as we move into the rest of the pods because they do their shows pants off. If you don't know what that means, go and listen to the pod. But I feel very pants off right now.
The last DLP pod was absolutely great. It really was. You could see how excited they were about training camp. They're absolutely buzzing.
Yeah, fantastic. Right, we have a little bit of a mailbag to go through, and then we're going to hit a couple of news items, and that will be that. So we've maybe got another 30 to 40 minutes-ish, maybe a little bit less if we go through it quickly. Outside the Huddle messaged us on Twitter, and they asked, interested to get your honest takes on Goff. He gets a lot of sick, but wonder what realistic expectations are for him this season. Now, we've talked about him generally, but maybe let's talk specifically some realistic expectations. What do you reckon, Steve? What's he actually going to do here? He's got that offensive line that he didn't have in LA in this recent year, but the receiving corps is substantially worse. No Woods, no Cup here, and players who could be them are rookies. They could do it, but on the balance of probability, perhaps not. Well, what do you think?
I think that, I'm not completely drinking the Goff Kool-Aid right now, but I think this is all about like strategy and how you're gonna, how do you skin the cat? And like look what the Bears have done with Fields. They've gone for Fields. There's so many holes on the Bears roster, and they've invested all that draft capital moving up into Fields. If Field is a bust, they are in big trouble. And for me, the fact that the Lions didn't do that, but instead, we've taken Saul, we've invested in the O-line. Goff should be a serviceable quarterback. Like, he was drafted really high. He's gone through all the scrutiny of the draft process. People have obviously, the guys who've scouted him can see something in him. He's gone to Los Angeles, and he's had two really good seasons. 2017, 28 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. Nearly 4,000 yards. 2018, 32 TDs, 12 interceptions, 4,500 yards. So this is not like a bum quarterback. We're not Bortles in here. We're not talking about Mitch Trubisky. We're talking about a perfectly serviceable mid-tier. You heard the comparison, Ryan Tannehill. This is all about scheme. Like, we have to be able to scheme plays that go to his strengths, and that's all about a strong O-line, a run game, being able to do RPO with credibility that we've got a strong running attack, and running backs catching balls out the backfield as well. I'm worried about the wide receiver core and his options, but I think that Goff is someone that is going to be that bridge. And you know what? If he is a success, then that means we don't have to invest the draft capital of Stafford into another QB. So for me, it's not the kind of crisis that some people have been like whining about on social media about what a disaster Goff's going to be. Let's give the guy a chance.
Yeah, I completely agree. Give the guy a chance, but I'm going to go further. When this whole process started, when we just come off the draft and it looked like, we weren't going for the short-term success, but we were looking to build for the future and perhaps not go for it straight away, I did think, maybe I won't go overboard with this. It seems to me that the team are not resigned to being bad. They're going to just not overstretch. And I thought, you know what, this really could be a 3-win year, a 4-win year, but it could look good, and I'll be happy with that. And it seems to happen every year. It happens to every Lions fan. But I am starting to drink the Kool-Aid just a little bit. At the end of the day, if you have a look at Goff's PFF stats, and I know Luke G's in the chat, and he'll probably shudder at me saying PFF, but I'm going to use it for good, my man. Luke, It's happening. I'm using PFF for the powers of good. If you have a look at Goff's stats, we've mentioned that he had good years in 2017 and 2018. 2018 season, including playoffs, he had 39 big-time throws to 30 turnover-worthy plays. This was not a conservative player. If you have a look at the guy that he was the year afterwards, 31 big-time throws to 27 turnover-worthy plays. And then in this most recent season, 14 big-time throws to 20 turnover-worthy plays. So this guy, when we said Jameis Winston-esque, at his peak, 39 big-time throws to 30 turnover-worthy plays. Winston is not the worst comp. If you have a look at the adjusted depth of target, he was at his highest when he was playing well. I know there's all this about his deep ball accuracy being bad, but it was only bad when he did not have a legitimate deep threat. When he had no one that could get open over the top, his throwing deep was bad. Well, it's because no one was open. Like, I can't get it into people's head enough that if you have an offensive line and a burn of wide receiver, doesn't matter if they're good or not, Rashad Perryman, for one, if he is able to burn past people, Goff is going to succeed. So Perryman can look bad at camp, but it is absolutely paramount that we keep him on the team because he's going to open Goff up. Perryman is the key to the lock that is Goff, and I think that Goff could actually be very, very good this year, but no one's talking about that. But it's a possibility. It really is.
And just look at those two seasons, though, his like supposed down seasons, 2019, 2020 for the Rams. I'm pretty sure Todd Gurley had the season where he was injured, 2019, then went to the Falcons, 2020. So 2017 and 2018 is when you had like prime Gurley as the threat, taking all the heat from the defense. And think about the injuries to like Andrew Whitworth that happened, and how up and down he's been. So you can kind of see how Goff's numbers of why they've gone down. And I don't just think it's Goff. Yeah, I think that the whole McVay thing probably is, as Riz said, was pretty toxic. But there's other factors at play there. So we've got Smith and Swift and Williams in the backfield, Hawkinson, red zone threat. We do have some options for him for that RPO game. So let's not, be crying just yet before he's taken a snap.
Yeah. I mean, there's other things that play into this as well. 2018 and 2019 were not actually that dissimilar in terms of PFF grade, but what changed? The drop rate went up. The turnover-worthy plays converted to turnovers more readily. The big-time throws didn't convert to touchdowns more readily. So you're looking at receivers making drops and the luck kind of going the way of the opposition a bit more. So all you've got to say is that we scheme well for Goff and get a bit lucky. And this is potentially a team that's going to do stuff in this division. I'm not going to say anything about the secondary, but with the coaching staff in there, Antoine Randall legitimately does get the best out of his receivers. We've seen it at Tampa. And I don't think the receivers are any different.
He's going to need to.
Yeah, he is going to need to, but I think Amon-Ra can do it. I think Hawk can do it. I think Tyrell can do it, and we might come on to him a bit later, but I legitimately think that this team can actually do something, and I'm going to start getting on this train now. Training camp hasn't started yet, but, last year I was convinced we were going to playoffs just because it had to be, or we were all going to cry because everyone gets fired. And you know what? Everyone got fired. But we've gotten rid of a lot of deadwood. There are no bad guys in that locker room anymore. People talked about poisoning the culture, but the poison in the culture was the Quinn Trisha players. The players that, got their head down, got on with it, but didn't really seem to be part of the team. And a cancer has been removed. The only remaining Quinn Trisha players are players who actually performed. Collins and Flowers. They are good players. They're very good players. And in part of a team that's going to elevate everyone, play as a team, it would be bigger than the sum of their parts.
Yeah.
I'm on board.
Let's think of an alternative universe as well. We take Fields at 7, and then Decker gets injured in the first 2 or 3 games. We're screwed. So, by investing in Saul and giving Goff a chance, let's talk to me after 5 games.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm with that. But he asked about realistic expectations for Goff. I will try and give you some realistic expectations for Goff. I think in the regular season, he's going to go for 4,400 yards, 25 touchdowns, 15 interceptions. I think that is probably realistic. I'm not sure that that gets us a huge amount of wins, but he said realistic, and I'm going to take the midpoint of where I think it could be. As I've just said, I think the upside is very high. I think we can do much better than that. But on an average year with an average amount of luck, I think 7 wins, 10 losses is probably where we're at, and that's where Goff is if that happens. So that's my realistic expectation. Do you have a kind of idea of where you think, if on an average season with an average amount of luck, what's Goff going to look like in terms of stats?
If he throws 15 interceptions, then I'm very quickly off the Goff train. The hype train dies there. You know, I mean, we had Mathbomb on the other day, and he was kind of still talking about the lines of, you know, in his view, and you know, he's done the analytics. He thinks we're going to get one of the, you know, be picking at 2 or 3 next year, which isn't a 7 and 10 season. I just think there's some bad teams out there.
Yeah.
And I don't think we are going to be in contention. And like I was saying, I think the Vikings are going to be the big contenders for the Packers this year. But I think that we could be 6 and 11.
Yeah, fair.
Because I think there's some bad teams, and I think that we've got the potential to win some games.
And you've got some good teams who will not be playing as much as the sum of their parts. You know, there are good players in bad teams, and there might be lots of talent, but there are some teams that just won't gel. We saw it with the Browns for years. They seem to have loaded teams and just woefully underperform. And speaking of the Browns, Phil on WhatsApp asked, which AFC team do you have a soft spot for? And it is the Browns for me. When I started supporting any NFL team, one of my criteria was a team not doing so well who I can kind of have in my heart to kind of grow with. That's one of the reasons why I followed Detroit. And one of the other teams I considered was Cleveland, because they were just so bad. And they've been so bad for so long. And it's quite nice to see them do well. It warms my heart a little bit. Steve, what about you?
Yeah, I've got a bit of a soft spot for the Buffalo Bills. First of all, I fucking hate the Patriots. And anyone that can challenge the Patriots and win that AFC East is right up there on my list. I like the Buffalo fans, absolutely crazy dudes. I like the Buffalo music scene. I just think that Buffalo is kind of like has got a bit of grit in it, and that kind of reminds me of Detroit in a way. And I love watching Josh Allen. I think a great player. So for me, I'd always have a soft spot for the Bills, and I hope they win that division this year.
Yeah, I'm with you on the Bills. You know how much I like Josh Allen. It was a running joke how much I liked Josh Allen last year, and that has not wavered. So, you know, I'm on the Josh Allen train still. Rob on WhatsApp also asked, give me one surprising breakout rookie and vet and one poor performance from a rookie and vet this season. I've also got Ant's answers in absentia for this, so why don't you take it first? I'll do it, and then I'll do it for Ant as well. So let's start with a surprising breakout rookie player.
I think Aleem McNeil is going to be a starter. I think he's going to beat out all the competition in training camp, and I think he's going to be able to deliver pressure from the inside. I think he is going to be quite a scary dude.
So for me, my rookie, I think is going to do well. I don't know. The word surprising is annoying to me, because is it going to be surprising if Amon-Ra does well? I'm going to claim it because he's a 4th rounder, you know. So I'm hoping that means the expectation is low, but he's going to start, and he's probably going to be the wide receiver with the most receptions for the Lions this year. So it's not surprising, but I'm claiming it because of where he was drafted. Ant agreed with you. He said Aleem McNeil, I believe he'll have the biggest rookie impact this season as a starter. I'm eager to see him bring his run-stopping and disruptive traits to the defensive line. And we come back to you for a breakout vet this season.
For me, it's got to be Romeo Aquara. We've paid the guy, you know, and you know the expectation has got to be there that he transcends from someone who's been like useful and being able to do a little bit of you know production and being our biggest threat. But being our biggest threat, that's not really much to be proud of when you think about that absolute, you know, awful pass rush last season. But so for me, now that we've paid the guy, I really want to see him showing us that we've got value for money. He's got his brother Julian is hopefully back and fit and healthy. So you know, hopefully we'll see some Romeo really kind of like be a star and have that breakout year.
I tend to agree with you in that Romeo had the number of sacks he had last year on his own. Like, no one was taking double teams for him.
Oh, he was doing it on his own, all on his own.
All on his own. So, you know, if we actually have some interior pressure that's attracting attention, God knows what Romeo can do. But I'm going to pick someone else, and I actually am going to go with Jeff. I think it's Halapulavati Vaitai. They seem absolutely convinced. They seem absolutely convinced that he is going to be able to do something this season. With Hank Fraley with him for another year, he would have absorbed a lot even when he's been injured through the year. He plays much better at guard. I wouldn't be paying him if I could get out of that contract, but we can't. But it doesn't mean he isn't going to play staggeringly well. And at the end of the day, I think Saul's going to do well, and I think that Ragnar's going to do well. Well, that makes the guard's job a hell of a lot easier. So, you know, you want someone as an unexpected guy to do well. That's who I'm going for. Right, a surprising. Oh, hang on, let's go for Ant. So Ant, he's an AFC team he has a soft spot for. Actually, I didn't go on this.